Welcome back to Clark County Today. I'm David Madore, your host. I'm with Tom Niewulis, and he is Mr. Samuel Adams, brought to current life here. You
Yes.
take on that character, and you do what you can to remind people of who he was and the values that he shared and the principles that will help us to, even in this time, guide us through issues to get us on the right track.
Correct. Yes.
Great. Okay. And this is something that you feel passionately about, and I'm glad. Was there any? You must have counterparts, other characters that you periodically want to get together with or share this passion with. Somebody, for instance, last night I watched an individual speak and look as though he was Theodore Roosevelt. It was quite amazing. He spoke. I mean, after a while, it was like suspend your disbelief. Yes. This is him. He did just a great guy. Who else do you know that takes on characters of their forefathers like this?
Well, Thomas Paine has been here to Vancouver at an event before, and he's probably one of the more well-known. That is Bob. All of a sudden, I'm missing his last name. Bob Basso.
Do you link to any of these other characters on your site?
The ones that I know personally and that I know can really speak the truth, I do.
That's
so
good.
Bob is one that I've met before. I have a lot of just high regard for him, and he's a very active fellow, been around quite a bit.
So making history come alive.
That's right.
When I was going through elementary school and some of my high school, I didn't realize the importance of history. I would go zero in on those classes. I felt like I can apply this. This makes sense. This is something that I can work with on a regular basis. And I didn't see the value of history at the time until years later. And I thought, oh, what I have left behind. Because if you don't know your history, you are bound to repeat it. Right. And normally you're going to repeat the worst of it.
Well, my comment on that is that was part of an interesting plan that if we really look, it was in about 1957. So that's when you and I were still, running around in short pants, and at that time. So in about 1957, it changed in the educational format from history to social studies and civics. So as we then went into high school and college and all of that, the whole perspective of what was being taught was clipped, and it wasn't made interesting, and it wasn't intended to be, so that we lost that perspective. So when my parents and yours and those before us, they did get history, and they understood that fundamental of what needed to be part of our American DNA. But when it went off to social studies, and it went off to what it became now in the educational system, we don't have that interesting perspective, nor do we understand then what the value is as we as individual citizens to participate in our government. Remember, Samuel Adams moved from the Tea Party, and this is one of the things I like telling the people.
So there really was a Tea Party back then?
Yeah, there really was a Tea Party.
Not just the dumping of the tea. There actually was a Tea Party.
Well, that's what it was. It wasn't the movement. It was the Sons of Liberty, which Samuel Adams started. And the Tea Party that happened because of that was because of the tax on the teas, the tariff on the tea. And that was one of the last straws that they said, enough of this. And they actually pleaded with the governor to take and say, hey, don't try and bring that in here, because that's not what we want. But the idea is that from that, it moved to we the people. So when we look at our preamble, it's we the people. And that's the important part, is our individual responsibility is not for our elected officials to go do the best thing that they think they can do. It's for us to participate.
So the valid authority that comes from an elected representative comes from the consent of the governed, and that comes right out of the Declaration of Independence.
That's right.
So it's really easy for people to get back to our foundational documents. The Declaration of Independence is what, 1.5 pages maybe? Easy to read, yet it's profound. And this is not just a contract we can just tear it up and do something different. This is something that is held with great veneration. This is something that is highly valued, and we should cherish it. Not as some religious thing, but just simply knowing that if we deviate from these foundations, we will go the way that most governments have gone throughout the world, which is the route of tyranny, dictatorship, and all of this top-down taking advantage of people. Now, there are some people that say, well, the Constitution is a living document. You know what they mean by that. What does that translate to?
Well, what it translates is that they can make up as they go what they think it should be and mean, instead of looking at the principles by which it was cemented to.
Right, and in a way, it seems the kinder or the most noble words you can say, use to say something like a living document. Well, that sounds good. I like life. I like documents. That's so good. But in reality, what they're saying is a cliche. To really give the excuse to say, well, it really doesn't mean what it says, and I can redefine what it says, and so therefore I'm not bound by it. Yet every person that's elected to any position in the United States has to swear to or affirm that they're going to uphold, protect, defend that Constitution. Right. So when they're saying that it's a living document, they're saying I'm not bound by that.
Correct.
That's a danger sign that says, man, if you're not going to, what does that oath mean, or what does that confirmation mean? What does your pledge mean that you're going to uphold it if you're really saying it doesn't mean anything, that you can redefine it? That's dangerous ground.
It is, absolutely. And that again, you know, that started happening in the late 1800s as the movements, and then in education and into law, and we can get into, you know, a lot more discussions on that at some other time. But the idea is that it is a fundamental document with some real key principles.
And it means what it says, and it says what it means.
And it's real simple. So when the arguments over all the different legislation that's been happening most recently, like the healthcare plan and all of that, if one read that, which unfortunately I did several times when it first came out, and then take that and look at it from its constitutional perspective, one can then come up very simplistically with about 9 to 14 violations of the whole healthcare plan.
And these are fundamental violations.
That's right, fundamental violations of our Constitution and our freedoms and liberties. And but most people don't understand that because they go back to, well, I need this, I want this, these costs, all of the other niceties and the flowering ideology and idealism, utopianism that it brings of universal health care, when in reality it is a gross, horrific violation of our freedoms and liberties.
Which is dangerous ground. So we have to be careful that we don't just send people to Washington to say, oh, just go get stuff for us, you be the one to be able to bring things back to us. And it seems that that does happen a lot, and we end up spending beyond our means, not living within any financial constraints, and borrowing from the future to the point where we're virtually bankrupt. We need to be able to know what those foundations are and live within those constraints that will guard our future and guard our path.
That's correct.
I'm glad you're there. I'm glad you're bringing these things to light, that you won't, you're one more influence that won't allow us to forget these individuals that took the time to sacrifice, to lay out those principles, put them in writing for us so that we can understand. And would they have a track record that we can say, hey, this blessed our nation for years and years and decades, and we don't want to leave those roots behind. Thank you very much for keeping them alive, for and knowing that our Constitution is a valid document, the Declaration of Independence, and all the writings that Samuel Adams has penned that we can draw from that will address the issues of today.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Thank you.